Educate yourselves. There are a number of different pathway options out there.
Most pilots don't understand what career opportunities are available in the world of aviation. They're making career decisions based on advice from friends or posts on internet forums, meaning they are taking huge risks with their livelihood without having all the details. This podcast was created to help you understand the aviation industry so you can find your dream job. Let's get ready for Pushback. Here's your host and my dad, Nik Fialka.
Hey, pilot, it's Nik Fialka. It's another awesome interview episode of Ready for Pushback. And today I'm talking to my friend, Kelvin Mason. And we are having a conversation about the Propel program at Delta Airlines. He runs the program. He's in charge of all of it. And he was gracious enough to let me actually go down to Atlanta to the Delta World headquarters and sit down with him in his office and talk all things Propel. A lot of people are thinking about, man, I really want to fly for Delta Airlines. I want to find a way to get a path there. And this conversation helps peel that onion. It helps you understand what it takes if you are a person starting a flight school or considering changing careers. Maybe you are a person that already works for Delta and you want to jump in, become a pilot, and leave the corporate world behind. This is how you do it. And we talk through it. We talk turkey about a lot of different stuff, and we go into a ton of detail. I really enjoyed it. I hope you really enjoy it. So sit back, relax. Let's get ready for Pushback.
And last but not least, let's have a quick word from our sponsors, because without them, we wouldn't have this awesome podcast.
Hey, pilot, did you just get a new conditional job offer? Are you getting out of the military and going to move your family across the country? Are you going to move in base somewhere? Or are you going to go out to find that second home that you've been looking for? Well, I want you to stop right now, pick up the phone, and call Marty and the team at Trident Home Loans. It's an organization that's run by pilots. They understand pilot pay. They understand contracts. They understand military. They have the best VA loans in the United States. Marty and his team have been doing mortgages for years. They've been doing my mortgages for years. I trust him and his team more than any other organization. I challenge you to get a better deal anywhere else. Go ahead, reach out, get a mortgage quote, and then call Marty and his team. They will walk you through the process and show you how competitive their rates are. So go right now, tridenthomeloans.com, and check them out.
Hey, pilot, I want to tell you about a great friend of the show, Timothy P. Pope. He's a financial planner, and he's completely focused on the professional pilot. He's the kind of guy you want to go to for real talk to help you figure out your financial future. With so many upgrades and so many transitions and so many things going on, you owe it to yourself to give him a call. He'll help you design and execute really smart financial planning strategies, whether it's retirement planning, investment management, military transition, tax planning. He's a great financial planning partner. Timothy P. Pope, CFP, helping professional pilots make the most out of life. Give him a shout. All the information's in the show notes. You should definitely tell him I told you to call.
All right, here we are. Kelvin Mason, how are you, sir?
Doing great.
Man, this is awesome. Kelvin is the king of Propel at Delta Airlines, and it's a very special day because I am sitting in Atlanta at the Delta headquarters in Kelvin's office, and this is such a treat. Hey, man, how are you?
Doing really great. Appreciate you having me on.
Man, so why don't you give me a little bit of background, talk to the pilot about what Propel is and how you got involved.
Sure. So Propel was launched back in 2018 as the first pathway program to a legacy mainline carrier. The concept of pathway programs is not new. They've been around in the regionals and the discount carriers for a while. Delta was the first major airline, though, to dive into this arena. And I, at the time at Delta, was working in human resources and had an opportunity to apply to lead the program when the original core team of Delta pilots that developed it and brought it into being went back to flying the line for a living. So it's really been the most rewarding part of my career to be involved with it.
When you talk about managing the program, like what facets are you coordinating on a given day?
Sure. So my team and I manage really all facets of the Propel program. So there are 4 different pathways that are available to those interested in pursuing a pilot career. Our company pathway is for our own internal Delta employees who may be looking to transition from whatever they're doing today to becoming a Delta pilot. So that could be your flight attendant, mechanic, gate agent, et cetera. And then our other pathways are really intended for people outside of the company who are interested in pursuing this profession. 2 primary paths. One is a collegiate aviation pathway, and the other is our new academy pathway, which we opened earlier this year in partnership with Skyborne, which is a flight school down in Vero Beach, Florida.
All right. So let's break those apart and kind of talk about each one individually. If the first part you talked about was if you're currently a Delta employee. And what's funny is yesterday I met a gentleman that's a Delta flight attendant that's currently going through ATP flight school and hoping to join the Propel program. And when I talked to him about the fact that I was coming over here, he had a lot of questions. And so first, give me the 30,000-foot view of that part.
Sure. The eligibility requirements are fairly easy. You have to have 2 years of employment with the company and have to be able to hold a first-class medical certificate. Those are really the basic requirements. Then you would apply to our program, and then we have a process to evaluate competitiveness. So we actually have a team of Delta pilots who does an application review. So they're looking at the person's educational background, employment background, if they do have any limited flight training experience. And then they move on to an online assessment, which is actually very similar to what external pilot candidates do when they apply to Delta. So it's measuring things like hand-eye coordination and reaction time and multitasking, those kind of things. And then the last step is an HR-style interview with 2 Delta pilots who probe their background and ask questions that are relevant to their experience level, because these are people very early on, obviously, in their pilot journeys. But if they're successful with that selection process, they're brought into the program. They're able to take a leave of absence from Delta where they maintain that employment tie. So they keep their original date of hire for things like non-rev travel seniority, the important things, obviously, in the airline industry. And then once they complete their flight training, they'll flight instruct to build flight time to ATP minimums. They will move on to one of Delta's regional partners in the Delta Connection to build turbine time and experience before ultimately transitioning back to Delta. And again, maintaining that original date of hire for company length of service and non-rev travel and those kind of things.
Yeah, that brings up a ton of questions. So if I'm currently working anywhere on campus here, and I'm interested in pursuing flying and aviation, I want to put forward a resume, but I'm not a pilot. So what stands out? What things do you think are highlighted on a great applicant and on a person that could be really cool?
Right. So we do look at their employment history, both at Delta and before Delta. What have they been involved in? We look at their educational history. You're probably familiar that kind of across the industry, the college degree requirement has gone away.
Yep.
But it is something that still makes someone more competitive if they do happen to have a 4-year degree. We also look at things that are sort of extracurricular activities. So any sort of community engagement, volunteer work, those kinds of things. And in the employment experience they've had, have they had the opportunity to be in a leadership role, even if it's not a formal manager role per se, but if they've directed others, if they've led teams or been in a position to influence people, then that's something that could weigh into it as well.
So I'm hearing somebody with a big heart, with somebody that tries to give greater than what they take, right? That volunteer mindset.
You got it.
And then that leadership part of lifting people up and working for a common goal. Those are 2 big things that really stand out to you.
For sure. And that's the sort of I would say the soft side of the application review process. Once they move past that, if they're successful, then we get into measuring those technical skills and competencies through that online assessment.
Yeah. Do you think there's any way to prepare for that?
There are a few tools out there, but I think it's the sort of thing where you either have it or you don't.
Yeah, man, it's tricky. I always had a ton of apprehension whenever it was time to sit down and do one of those. It's not easy, but also you got to be loose when you do it, right? Got to just be in the zone. Okay, and then we're going to sit down and do an interview.
Right.
And should I wear a suit?
Definitely. So yeah, we do take it very seriously. And it is, again, with 2 Delta pilots, which can be intimidating for someone who maybe has 40 hours in an airplane and sitting across from 2 professional pilots, but they're also trained to put them at ease. And it's not a matter of trick questions and that kind of thing. They're just to get to know them as a candidate.
Are the pilots wearing their pilot uniform or are they in civilian clothes?
In civilian, dressed up, but not in uniform.
Yeah, okay. Similar to the pilot selection team, how they do it.
Exactly.
Very good. Man, it'd be hard to relax if you're in a double-breasted suit sitting across the table. That's good. And are they asking typical pilot hiring questions? What would you do questions, or tell me about a time questions?
Tell me about a time questions. Yeah. Again, looking for those things that would lead to someone being successful in that type of role. And it is more soft skill focused at that point. They're not going to ask them, what would you do if you lose an engine above the Atlantic? They would have no concept of that at this point in their experience level. So it's all more about, tell me about a time where you had to deal with ambiguity or deal with conflict, those kinds of HR style questions.
Yeah. And that's good. That's such good knowledge. It's so hard to prepare yourself whenever it's just the unknown, right?
Right.
And that's important. So if I got through that's the third final wicket, right?
Right. Once that point, that's when you would receive your conditional job offer. And then you actually go through that same psychological exam process that external pilot applicants go through. So that same MMPI-2 exam and virtual meeting with a psychologist. And I think that Delta is one of the few carriers that still has something like that
only one
in place. So that is really the full gamut of things someone would have to go through. We have approximately, let's say, just over 100 or so employees at various stages of this program, some very early on in flight training, others who are at regionals. And we've had several that have actually completed the program and are now flying the line for Delta.
Okay. Do you take a leave of absence to go do this?
You do. So that allows you to kind of dedicate your time full time to pursuing this venture. We have, with our most recent round of our application process, have now allowed people to pursue part-time employment if their department offers it, which is not that common at Delta, but where available, that would be another option for them as well.
Let's say it doesn't work out. Let's say I make it partway through and whatever, maybe life happens, maybe I'm not successful at it, whatever it is, am I allowed to come back?
Yes. Unfortunately, we have had it happen a few times. It's been rare, but it has happened. Mostly it's been to personal reasons where someone just decided to voluntarily step away. There have been a couple who were just unsuccessful either in flight training or once they got to the regionals. But in those cases, we have facilitated transitioning them back to their previous department if they wish to return. It's trickier for office staff, so individuals like myself who work in the corporate environment. If we take a lengthy leave of absence, the company is going to backfill our job because they need that function to be filled. So kind of a bigger leap of faith for, office staff to pursue that because they may not have a job to come back to if it doesn't work out. But for frontline scale employees, again, like your flight attendants and mechanics, gate agents, we've had success in transitioning them back to their prior role.
If you want to do it, just give me a call and I'll walk you through the whole thing.
Fair enough.
I'll point you towards a podcast. All right. So have we had employees successfully get to the line that have been doing this for a while?
Yes. Overall in Propel, we've had 170 people between our collegiate and our company pathways who've made it to Delta, and they've all done great. We were curious all along, how are they going to perform? They're in this accelerated track. How are they going to do when they get here? And they've all done amazingly well in training. And so far, we're very pleased with it. So yeah, it's been great.
I love that. It's so fun. The opportunity to get all the way from not having the opportunity to being able to see that if that's a thing you want to do, if you came to work for this airline because you wanted to get in the sky, that's a great opportunity. Is there a limited amount of people that you're taking per year?
We don't have an allotment per se. This year, in fact, tomorrow, we're going to be welcoming over 60 employees into the program. It's our largest class we've ever had. So one thing I forgot to mention is that in addition to this incredible opportunity to obviously get this job offer and have the time away from work to pursue it, we're also offering financial incentives that didn't exist previously. So just this year, we rolled out a financial contribution from Delta up to $20,000. So that'll cover essentially one certificate or rating. They're also eligible for a unique loan product that we negotiated with the Delta Community Credit Union, which is a fantastic organization. And that loan is set up where while they're in flight training and time building, it's an interest-only loan payment, and Delta actually covers the cost of that interest. So two great financial incentives that obviously...
no way.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
Yeah.
You don't know how many people I talk to that have $200,000 worth of debt and that are at 7% and 9% at a regional.
Right.
And trying to think about, maybe they've got a young spouse or littles at the house or whatever, right? What an opportunity, man.
And the rationale for it was, Delta wanting to remove barriers to entry because this is not an inexpensive thing to pursue. And so it certainly helps people along the way.
You know what? It's a really good point. And the one of the things that's awesome about this organization, this company, is when you look around, there are people from all walks of life. And it doesn't matter. I would like to think that it doesn't matter if you grew up in a house that could barely keep the electricity on, that if you want to go do this, like you're provided the opportunity.
Right.
And that's important, right? Because that gets diversity of thought, diversity of experience, diversity of leadership, and the things that we need to build a better organization. Because it's not just about like we're not creating like a widget. Right. No offense to the triangle, but we're not a thing to fit in a square. It's just not that. It's a human experience involved with flying planes too. Right. Please tell me if I'm wrong.
No, that's absolutely it. And you mentioned diversity. It has been interesting as we've put this out that we are seeing in Propel, especially on the company side of Propel, much greater numbers in terms of diverse candidates than we typically see with our external off-the-street applicants.
Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, you walk around this campus, and it looks like the airport, right? It's just the entire world in one spot. And it's really cool. And you see all the flags when you drive in, celebrating all the things. I love it. All right. So we've talked a lot about the company aspect of it, right? So how about you said there are 4 pillars. The next one is the college student, right?
Correct. And that's the largest part of Propel. The vast majority of our participants come from that side. So Delta has partnerships with 17 universities across the country that have aviation programs, and students who are in their junior year, senior year, or graduates within 6 months have the opportunity to apply to Propel, assuming they meet all other eligibility criteria. So obviously these are students who are going to college, pursuing this major in professional flight education. They know they want to be airline pilots. And we've vetted these schools. We have a lot of faith in the quality of their training and the type of graduates that they produce. So we have over 500 collegiate participants in the program today, and that number is just continuing to grow.
What does it look like I can imagine as a person that has gone to a college, when you have these juniors kind of starting to step into it, there's probably a high level of competition to be able to be awarded the Propel program. So what kind of things are involved with that?
Similar to what we discussed on the company side, we are looking at obviously their educational background. At this point, probably limited background from an employment standpoint. But again, we are looking at those extracurriculars. What all are they involved in? And how are they doing in terms of flight training? At this point, if you're a junior at one of these college aviation programs, you're most likely kind of at the commercial stage around that point. So at least have a limited body of work there to evaluate how have you done on your check rides, on your stage checks. And like I said, we've had a lot of success with the program. In addition to the collegiate side, we did something in 2022 to broaden this, and we call it our community pathway. So if you're a college aviation student, but you don't happen to be attending one of Delta's 17 partner schools, there's still an opportunity for you to apply to Propel if you're involved with any of Delta's partner organizations. So if you think of like Women in Aviation and OBAP and GPA, so let's say they're a volunteer or maybe they're involved in a collegiate chapter of one of those organizations, they have the opportunity to reach out to that organization and ask to be considered for Propel. So we've been able to expand beyond just our 17 partner schools and really attract a broad range of collegiate aviation students.
All right. Joel, if you're listening, man, get your OBAP and get everybody involved to start pushing these college boys and girls over to the Propel world.
There we go.
I love it. The opportunity, it's smart. How did that come? You're focused on the college start and getting them moving, but how did you decide, hey, look, we support these organizations. We love what they do.
We have long-standing relationships with these organizations, and so it just made sense to have a connection. And plus, as you can imagine, when we launched Propel, we heard from almost every college aviation program saying, we would love to partner with you. And
of course,
we would love to do that as well, but there is a lot that comes along with that. And supporting these schools, we don't want to just say, hey, we're partnered with this organization. We have kind of a kickoff party, and then you never see us again. So we stay very engaged with our partner universities. We maintain a campus presence, and we just physically can't do that everywhere. So this community option really allows us to possibly interact with the entire array of collegiate aviation in terms of students who are interested in coming to Delta.
Talk about what the presence is like. What does that look like?
For all of our partner schools, we have a group of Delta pilots we refer to as college liaisons. Typically, they're alumni from that school, but not always. So they're going to be out there doing different things. Sometimes it's a formal presentation in uniform, talking about something that would be of interest to a collegiate aviation student. Sometimes it's more informal, just an engagement opportunity, a social event. Sometimes just going out and walking the flight line and just individually talking to students and seeing what they want to do and seeing if we can answer any questions for them.
And so how often do they try to go down for certain large events and things like that?
Right. So we're there for things like the collegiate career fairs and those kinds of things. We tend to have at least one formal presentation on campus once a month. We call that a Delta Day. And we do a special engagement event for all of the Propel participants who are at that school who've already been selected into the program. They have just informal visits at least once a month.
Do you give out lots of this good swag that you have behind you?
Oh, yeah.
I love that.
So that always gets college students' attention. That and free food.
Yeah. Free food for sure. My kids have the little rubber duck at home. They love it.
Perfect.
All right. So you're going out there, you're sending pilots out to be there. If you're selected for a Propel, I would imagine there would be some kind of pilot that would raise his or her hand and say, I want to be part of this person's life.
Yes. And in fact, that's actually a pretty big part of the Propel program. All of our participants, regardless of pathway, are assigned a Delta pilot mentor who's going to be with them throughout their journey. So that includes all the way at the beginning, all the way until they get to day one of INDOC at Delta. And there are certain things that we are asked them to check in on with those students just to make sure they are progressing and following the outline that we've laid out for them. You're getting this job offer very early on in the process. Just follow the steps, and that mentor's there to make sure that they do just that.
I can imagine there's this level of, how old's a college student? 20, right? And then how old is a Delta pilot? Like 40, 50, 60, 64 and a half, right? I can imagine it being difficult to initially to go from, hey, here's a Delta pilot to like, here's a friend, here's an advocate, here's somebody that I can trust, that I can ask the hard questions to, whether it's pretty or not. How do you get people like that?
Right. We put out an expression of interest anytime that we're hiring mentors, and we ask those questions on the front end, like, why are you interested in doing this? And what involvement or what experience do you have in mentoring, even if it's informal with friends and family, or in more of a formal capacity at a previous airline or in a university setting. And so good luck with that. And we put them through a pretty extensive training so they understand all the facets of the program, the common obstacles that someone face along the way, so they're equipped to be able to help these students.
Yeah, there's so many line pilots that do listen to this show, and I would encourage you, if you want to give back a little bit more and you're from one of these schools, even if you're not, if you're a cool person, do it. If you're not cool, like, understand you're not cool and don't apply, please. Because you got to keep the candidate on the go. You've got to keep them motivated. You've got to keep them feeling the love, right? And that there's a lot of external factors out there that can drive them away. So you've got to be involved.
Yeah, 100%. And that's actually a really big part of it, what you just touched on, because when they first get brought into the program, we actually bring these students here to Atlanta, and they get to see our corporate campus and get a kind of dose of the Delta culture. Beyond that, though, they kind of go back into flight training and they're progressing along. So their main connection to Delta and the brand,
I would say that the opportunity for success is completely driven by that mentor. And you've got to have a lot of faith that they are, the mentors I've met that are Propel mentors really wear it on their sleeve.
Oh, for sure.
It's a really cool thing. Our buddy that introduced us, Al, he's
one of the best.
One of the best. He took me. Look, I'm his, he picked me up. He's like, hey, we're going to be best pals. But that's how he rolls. And I would expect that's how everybody would be similar to his humanity, to be that guy that or gal that you want to be when you grow up.
Mm-hmm. It's that enthusiasm and that ability to help people along when they do have a setback, because that does happen. You are going to have people who are in the program who are going to have a failed check ride, and what do they do to pick themselves up and move forward from that. So those mentors are key to that.
So let's say somebody stubs their toe. How do they manage that in the program and still stay with it?
Yeah, the first, what we would advise them, the first point of contact would be their mentor. Talk to them about what happened. What have you learned from it? What's your plan to kind of overcome it and move forward? And the mentor is trained to be able to help with that sort of thing. And then assuming that they're able to do that and there's no further issues, then they're going to be just fine. They'll keep progressing along the path.
Yeah, being able to put it behind you. And I tell you, as a pilot, as a person that wants to succeed, if you were going down that path, there's a lot to putting something behind you. And it's really hard to do. But it's a great opportunity to just learn about yourself.
Right.
And you're going to be better because you're never going to be perfect.
I've learned something from every time.
Yeah. There are people that flew with the Thunderbirds and the Blue Angels and the astronauts and everything, and they've struggled too.
Sure.
And so it's hard being a person, and that's okay. All right, we've got two more pillars to talk about. help me. What we didn't gloss on those. What are our last two pillars for Propel?
Right. So the college and the community were those are the second and third pillars.
Okay.
The final one is our academy pathway, which is our newest. And that is something that we launched just a few months ago. And again, this is in partnership with Skyborne Airline Academy. They are a flight school based in the UK that actually bought out what used to be the Flight Safety Academy down in Vero Beach, Florida. Flight Safety ran that operation for 40, 50 years and then had gotten out of the business of flight training and sold off the facility. Skyborne had been dying for an opportunity to break into the U.S. market, so this was a perfect venture for them. So they put in a lot of time and attention into revitalizing that facility. And we announced our partnership earlier this year. So now someone beyond these very specific populations I've mentioned before. So you don't have to just be a Delta employee, or you don't have to be a collegiate aviation student. You can be anyone who's interested in pursuing this career would have the opportunity to apply to the academy, go through an accelerated track of knocking out all your flight training in approximately a year, and moving on to your time building and experience building before transitioning to Delta. So if you can hold a first-class medical certificate and you're 18 years old, you have the ability to apply to the academy.
Is it a Part 141 school?
It is.
Okay, so they qualify for restricted ATP.
They don't for the 1,000-hour or 750 that applies to collegiate aviation students and military pilots. They do get credit for that for some of their earlier certificates and ratings, but not for reduced hour restricted ATP.
I see. So you're still going to have to hit that 1,500 hour
Correct.
Before you start with a Part 121 carrier.
Exactly.
And so the idea here is you would go to Skyborne, go through the process, get your certs, get your CFI.
Correct.
And then start banging out your hours as a CFI in kind of this mutually beneficial circle, and then go on to the regional.
That's exactly that.
Okay.
Right.
I think about at some point there, best case scenario, there's as many pilots, as many candidates as you need going through there, right? And at some point, there could be a constriction in the Venturi, right, where people are either waiting for training or waiting to get a CFI spot or whatever. Are there any other opportunities out there to get flying and get time?
We're discussing those things now. For the time being, we are still sticking to the game plan of flight instructing there to helping the school out with instructor availability and staffing. But I think as this thing matures, then I think we would look at other opportunities for people to build time beyond that.
Yeah, I would say from the aspect of the pilot, when I talk to young people that are interested in being pilots, they're always wanting to know, what is the most efficient way to get to the point where I want to be? I want to be a Delta pilot. I want to wear a hat, and I want to wear a double-breasted suit, or single-breasted now because they just had a uniform change like yesterday. But there are some organizations that have other cadet programs that have come to, like, they don't have enough instructors, or they don't have enough aircraft, or they don't have enough of this or that or the other. And so keeping that focus is what I hear from my people, right? From the people that talk to me. They want to know that if they're going to make this financial commitment, that all of a sudden it's not going to take them 2 or 3 extra years just waiting on stuff, right?
And that falls on our team to be very engaged with all of our partners. So obviously on the academy, that's Skyborne, but with our collegiate partners as well, we will hear things from time to time about CFI staffing issues or weather cancellations, whatever the case is. We want to be involved to try to help these entities produce pilots. And that was really kind of one of the motivating factors when we developed the Propel program. It wasn't just about fixing or solving for Delta's pilot hiring needs. It was about how do we help the entire ecosphere involved with producing and developing pilots.
Yeah. And so I guess I forgot to ask, when a candidate applies for this, are they also going through the interview process?
They are. So for the academy specifically, they will first go through a selection process with Skyborne. They're focused primarily on technical skills. They're trying to identify candidates who will be successful in flight training. We have a follow-up selection process on the back end of that, where we're really looking for the Delta piece of it, more the soft skill aspect.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think it would take to get from Skyborne to new hire class here at Delta?
So for all of our pathways, including the academy, we quote a time frame which is 42 months or less. And that clock starts at day one of NDOC at a regional. So we did that intentionally because there are other pathway programs out there that have a different way of quoting that timeline. They'll say, join our program and you'll be able to reach your destination airline in as little as X number of months or X number of hours. And we wanted to intentionally be different than that. So we wanted to give people a firm idea of what's the maximum they would have to wait. So that 3.5 years at a regional is the longest time frame they would expect. And I'm happy to report that all of our 170 plus who have graduated from Propel and have transitioned to Delta, they've all reached us in less than 42 months at a regional, in some cases significantly less than that.
Do they have to upgrade to captain at the regional?
If the opportunity comes by, they do. If for some reason we pull them earlier, then they wouldn't be required to stay for that.
Is it based on how much time they put in or how many hours they build?
A little of both.
A little of both. All right. So you got to be there a certain number of months and you've got to bang out a certain number of hours.
Right.
You can't just go sit on reserve and just sit on the beach drinking Mai Tais.
And we tried, to the extent that we can, we're making sure that the people who are coming through this pathway are on par with the external candidates that we're hiring directly from other airlines and the military and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Does everybody go to Endeavor since that's a wholly owned by Delta?
Not everyone. So I'll talk about the college side of Propel since the majority of our participants are there. They have the option of going to our 3 Delta Connection carriers, so Endeavor, SkyWest, or Republic. We also have an option for them to apply or fly for Wheels Up since we have an ownership stake in that organization. There's also a military pathway, which has not been too common, but for someone who wants to skip the CFI stage and wants to become a military aviator, upon graduation from their university, they can get hired on at a unit in the Guard or Reserve, go through military training, military flight training, and build their experience that way instead.
As a person that has done that path, that is a long road.
Yes.
It is a long road, but it just depends on your mindset.
Right.
How about the people getting out of the military? I imagine opportunity to funnel. Clearly, you've got people that have the requisite time to just go through the front door. But then you have people that have helicopter time, right?
Sure.
That have just been flying helicopters for 20 years and then looking for an opportunity to kind of funnel in that already have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 hours of flight time. Right. Is there any conversation about building out Propel to look towards encouraging them to come toward Delta?
It's something that we've looked at. There are rotor transition type programs out there. So we've looked into that concept. As of today, we don't have anything like that. It's right now just focused more on those who are going to be going through the full pathway through our existing programs.
Yeah. If Ed Bastian's listening, I think you should give one of those things going. Great opportunity. Helicopter guys are cool. And girls. They're awesome. If you were sitting down with somebody and they didn't know about Propel, but they're like in aviation, what kind of things would you tell them? What would you talk to them about?
I think just the fact that this is an amazing career. Obviously, it's a place where you have the best office view in the world.
Yeah.
It's a lucrative career. You see the contracts that have come out here in the recent years.
What questions am I not asking about Propel that we should be talking about?
I think it's around the entry point for someone who's wanting to pursue it.
Okay.
And the reason I say that, when we launched the academy, we assumed that the people who would gravitate towards it are those who were just out of high school, who didn't have an interest in pursuing a college education, but wanted to pursue a professional pilot career. But instead, what we found is that the majority of the applicants we're seeing are career changers. So we have people in their 20s, in their 30s, even early 40s, who did something for a period of time, some sort of corporate job, decided they didn't like it and wanted to pursue this. And for some, it's been a huge change because we're seeing people who are young moms, for example, who are wanting to pursue this with the challenge of how are you going to juggle flight training while raising small children and all that comes along with that. So it's just an incredible opportunity for anyone who wants to pursue it. In my view, there's never been a better time to pursue a pilot career than what we've seen with everything coming out of the pandemic, with the industry growing again. There already being a shortage before the pandemic happened. And then you have all these carriers doing these early retirement programs. So it just exacerbated the problem. So now there is this huge demand for pilots. The candidate pool is low. So it's an incredible time to pursue this.
Yeah, the candidate pool is really low. Yesterday, Eric Hendrick, the director of pilot selection, he put out that they're going to look to hire 200 pilots again, at least the first quarter of next year, which is on par with what they did this year. However, when you look across aviation right now, if you're listening to this and you're thinking about what's going on and, maybe I should do this, that, or the other, and maybe I should shy away from Propel because I don't want to wait 42 months or whatever it is. A couple of things I want you to think about right now: what's happening at Frontier, what's happening at Spirit, the Pratt & Whitney engines that Spirit has so many of. They stop pilot hiring for an entire year at least because of their lack of capacity. You have a constriction happening in the ULCC markets. You have the regionals have been fat on first officers and really, really struggling for captains. And so as there's a little bit of a constriction on paths that seemed relatively typical, the opportunity, if you're a cadet, is there any chance they're going to turn that faucet off halfway through your thing and all of a sudden you're totally screwed?
That wouldn't be our game plan. We would make good on any commitments that we had. And we have thought about that, in a scenario where hiring goes to zero or whatever. We would prioritize those who are in the program, who are holding a job offer, who we've invested in to make good on the commitment we've made to them.
Yeah. So when you were making your decision, pilot, when you are thinking about that, realize, and that's one of the things I think the integrity portion of this organization is very important, and keeping that confidence, because it only takes one time, right? And that's important. I love that. It's a very, very interesting part of the conversation, because you never know when the next COVID shows up, when the next September 11th, whatever black swan event it's going to be. It could just be a recession, and it could be a blip, or it could be extended. We don't know. So when you make these decisions for you and your family, or your future family, if you're a young man or young woman, consider that. And it's hard. It's a hard decision.
Right. And you bring up a good point, because this is a tough business.
Yeah.
And there's times when the music stops. And when that happens, you do want to be at a place with a strong brand and a strong balance sheet. And I think some people, as they dive into this, may think about where I want to be based. And those are important considerations, but in a place where, in an industry that's not for the faint of heart, you do want to think about those financial pieces as well.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, if you're listening and considering Propel right now, and your first thought is, I want to live in whatever, Minneapolis, Denver, Germany, wherever you want to live, and I want to fly a 767 or a 350 or a whatever, your ideals are going to change about 500 times before you get there. So 0% of that actually matters. Because if you're in the program and all of a sudden you meet the love of your life, and the love of your life lives in Texas, and that wasn't the plan, guess what the new plan is? Texas, right? Or lives in Atlanta or whatever. Right. Man, I could write you a book of all my great plans and how they've pivoted, and none of them have. I didn't think I'd have a podcast. Somebody knew me 3 years ago, be like, yeah, right. Probably still today. But that's just it. Please don't concentrate on what it is you want to fly and where you want to live. These bases come and go, man.
Sure do.
I mean, Fort Worth used to be a base for Delta. It's not anymore. There are lots of examples. They were thinking Boston was going to become a base, hasn't become a base. You don't know, right. And you don't have control of that. And so you need to not let that be part of your decision-making process. Really what it is, can I wear this hat? Can I represent this company? Does this company represent what I want it to represent? Am I a good fit? Are they a good fit for me? And you know that by your mentor. And so the mentors that are listening, you got to go 110% in the paint, because people rely on you for that. And that mentorship portion, that's the thing that makes it or breaks it for the people.
100%.
Yeah. Gosh, man. Who knew? I love this. I don't know. So we've been talking for 40 minutes. What would you tell that person listening right now if they're kind of on the fence?
I would say, just to educate yourselves, there are a number of different pathway options out there. After Delta launched the Propel program, you started to see a lot of other carriers launch similar versions of it. So at this point, everyone has their version of it. And I would just encourage people to do their homework and see what makes sense for them. For more information about Propel, they can go to our website, which is propel.delta.com. And on social media, our Instagram handle is Delta Propel. And we post a lot of information about all things Propel there.
That's awesome. Or you can reach out to me and I'll connect you with somebody on the Propel team. Sure. If you need an assist, man.
There we go.
We're happy to do it. Kelvin, man, you're great. I know I'm taking your whole work day. There are people lined up at the door. We're sitting in your office surrounded by all this cool Propel stuff. And I really appreciate your generosity. I appreciate what you do for this organization. I appreciate the dedication that you do. You don't just run the program, you are Propel. So thank you for that. And on behalf of all of the pilots coming through, thank you for pushing to make this organization better.
It's been my pleasure. Appreciate you having me on.
All right, man. We'll catch you later.
Thanks.
Hey, before you jump out of here and go on to the next podcast, can I ask a big favor? Would you mind going over to your app that you're listening to this podcast on and give me a review? Give me a 5-star review if you love it. Give me a 1-star review if it totally sucks. Put a comment in there, something that is helpful. It helps me. It helps get the word out there. It helps people find the podcast, and that's super cool. If you don't do that, maybe you could just share the podcast with a friend. Tell a buddy who's trying to figure it out, trying to sort out this pilot dream of theirs and get a little bit further. That is super awesome as well. Last, if you don't do either of those two things, how about this? Find a way today to make yourself 1% better. Do that thing that you've been putting off. Put your foot forward, make movement, get yourself going, get that inertia that you need to succeed in this industry. So that's your choice. Leave a review, tell a friend, or make yourself better. Either way, it's all a good choice. And I'm super stoked you're listening, and I will see you on the next episode. The statements made on this show are my own opinions and do not reflect, nor are they under any direction from my employer.